I'm the kind of person who is all dry as a bone. But I believe that that is strength, and that's reality. And another kind of person says to him, oh, you are intolerable. You're so dry, you're so dull, you rattle. You don't have any juice in you. And what we need is juice. And we need flow. We need lilt and rhythm and gaiety, you see. So that's an opposed mythology. And that's another character part you're going to play. But so we've got to consider these are games, you see, as I tried to show you earlier. The kind of roles we play are the kind of games we play. So, but the question is, which is the optimal game? Certainly we can't do without some prickly people, because life is prickles and goo. And it's basically gooey prickles and prickly goo, but the gooey people are always trying to make out that it's only goo, and the prickly people are always trying to make out it's only prickles. Now we do need both, see? But the question is fundamentally, which game works better? The game that resists the vibration, the flip-flop, or the game that goes with it? Obviously the game that goes with it, that cooperates with the general scene, will be a longer game and a more amusing game than one that totally resists it. Although, I said totally advisedly, because it's great fun to resist it at times. See, it's just like when somebody massages you, extreme, lively sensitivity. And on the other hand, we'll take the opposite limit, which is geological. The stone, the blind energy, the electrical force without any consciousness whatsoever. These are observable things. We see the living human being on one extreme, and we see the stone or the fire on the other. Now, our 19th century mythologist wants to describe this limit in terms of this one. He wants to say that consciousness is nothing but a very complicated form of minerals. Why can't you go the other way and just as easily say minerals are a very simple form of consciousness? That works, doesn't it? I mean, after all, here's this mineral. I knock it, and it says that to me. This is a rudimentary form of consciousness. This thing inside is not making a noise to itself, because that requires ears. But in some way, this thing is going to itself. It's shaking like that. And that's its consciousness, its response, its resonance. It isn't totally unconscious, but its consciousness is extremely simple. Now, you may think I'm spinning fairy stories, but is that any more of a fairy story than to say that your consciousness is nothing but chemistry? I mean, you think you're conscious, and that you have this high and mighty state of affairs, but actually, of course, if we look at this very realistically, all this is just colloidal substances bubbling around. See, both that story and the other story can be made to seem equally fanciful. But the question is this: if I say about the gong, look, my friend, I respect you because you are a little bit conscious. See, you relate to me. You're kind of a younger brother, and then there's something endearing and warm about this attitude to things. Whereas if I say, psst, you're just a piece of metal, and as a matter of fact, I'm just a piece of metal too. That's a kind of insult. So the people who believe that are really suicidal maniacs. They want to put themselves down. They are against their own life, and they take a great pride in being that way, and they call it being realistic. And I'm only saying it's a better gamble to take it the other way and say the best thing you can say about it, that this is a living being, but not so much of a living being as a snail or something that actually wanders along and wiggles. So you see the pressure upon us of the whole mythology of the 19th century, the whole attitude of putting down the universe because the previous myth had been too uncomfortably alive, is simply a way of looking at things. Let me give another illustration of the same thing. If you study the various forms of life from the standpoint of natural selection, you may come up with a rationalization for everything. Somebody wants to know, why do butterflies have eyes on their wings? Some butterflies. Well, somebody scratches his head and says, oh, well, there must be an explanation for that. There's an explanation for everything. Why is there an explanation for everything? Because the universe is really a tight engineering job. So, why do some butterflies have eyes? Well, it so happened that some fluke of a butterfly once got an eye on its wing, and birds would avoid it because that eye looked at them and it was just too much. So those butterflies that had eyes on their wings bred, whereas the butterflies that didn't have eyes got eaten up more easily. Although some of them had other alternatives, because of not having eyes, they were invisible and the birds couldn't see them. And so more of that kind survived, although those with the terrifying eyes survived, and so they didn't get eaten up either. So those it tended to multiply. So it's just a perfectly easy, simple explanation of why butterflies have eyes on their wings. Also, other things, some birds with extraordinary plumages, which look so obvious that anybody could catch them, any cat, any hunter. No, they survived because they were so attractive to their females. And so they bred very well. As a matter of fact, this isn't true, they didn't. And, but any explanation will do, provided it seems to explain. Now that is one way of looking at things.